Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to the Cats and Dogs studio, except the other two guys aren't in it. Ryan Gilbert and Cole Carmody. I'm Tim Fitzgerald. We're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. This is your weekly endeavor into Kansas State sports, where the VIPs at GoPowercat.com get to ask the questions for us to answer. And fellas, before we get started, let's just run through our podcast schedule, because we've got it set now for the fall. We will be doing the Insiders live every Monday night, probably at 8. Might vary depending on what Monday night game's going on. If the Chiefs are playing, we got problems. But we'll figure that out when that time comes. That will actually appear on the site then at midnight, heading into Tuesday. Then Wednesday at midnight is this podcast. Thursday at midnight is the pregame podcast. And Friday at midnight, heading into the day of Friday, is the Friday walkthrough. That's why it's named the Friday walkthrough. And then after the game, we're going to have a post-game podcast. But Cole, this season, the road games come with a little twist. You want to explain that?
Yeah. So for the road games this season, Brian Hanley and I will be doing a live show. And so we'll be going live right after the game. So as soon as the game gets over, probably 5, 6, 7 minutes or so, flip on over to the Go Powercat YouTube channel, where Big B and I will be discussing those games. If you can't catch it live, that's okay, because it'll be posted just like it normally is for the Powercat, Go Powercat YouTube channel. But if you are in the mood to interact with us, we might answer some questions. It depends on how the games go, but we're looking forward to this. We've never done this before, but we've kind of tinkered with some live stuff before. But since I will not be going on the road this year, we figured, why not? Big B and I will be in separate parts of the countries, but with the beauty of the internet, we're able to interact on an instant basis. So you guys will be down there for the game, but we'll be back here and ready to give you our instant reactions.
I think this is an awesome idea, Cole. I'm glad you came up with it, because now, not as many people travel to games anymore. I mean, with big screen TVs and the cost of gas, a lot of people are watching at home, and this will give them an outlet. If you're on a smart TV, you can just flip over to your YouTube app and watch it right there on your TV and catch a post-game podcast from Cole and Brian Hanley. There might be, some changes to that lineup. I imagine Cole will be hosting quite a bit throughout the season, if not all those 6 road games. And that loosens up Gills and I just to get our work done. Mm-hmm. And then, in New Orleans, theoretically doing something different.
Visiting the inspiration for Toby Osunsami's sack celebration.
I should go see that guy and interview him. I don't think he'd have a comment. I think he would just.
No, I agree.
Well, we're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. We've been sponsored by them for many years, and we're heading into a new season. So make sure every time you come to town, you don't just go to the Fridge. You let them know you are there, because you listen to their ads on the Powercat podcast. And let's get rolling. Guys, you notice the new music? I'm redoing all the opens. Slowly, I'm kind of rolling out the new opens. Just shorter, sweeter, and right to the point, like Ryan Gilbert's love life. Now, it's your questions from Wabash Station and Ryan Gilbert.
What am I going to do with you, Fitz? What am I going to do with you, man? First question is from Snarecat3. Chris Kleiman mentioned that there are players on this team who will play significant minutes that maybe the fans and media haven't heard much about. Who are some of those players that stood out to you against UT Martin who were pleasant surprises?
Travis Bates, for one.
Yeah.
I mean, we were so focused, I am, on the young DNs. I thought it was odd that this kid transferred in. It's like, that's the deepest spot of the team, and you're transferring in. Have fun being a backup, but no, he's heavy in that rotation, particularly when they go to 4-man front and they use that third defensive end as a defensive tackle. He and Cheedy kind of split that time, but Travis Bates was on the field. He played well. You know what? Add him to the list of another good player, because I didn't see that one coming, but there he is.
I'm going to say Joe Jackson, guys. That's a guy who, we've heard so much about DJ and Dylan, and rightfully so. I know they've talked up that running back room, but I'll be honest, when I heard, Le James White and Joe Jackson, I really thought that was just kind of throwing them a bone. trying to get those guys, hey, you're doing a good job. We're going to throw your name in the media. So, you still have that, a positivity, that positive attitude going into game week. But they used him. And I don't necessarily think LaJames White will be a full-time contributor on this team, but I think Joe Jackson's going to get some carries. And Fitz, remember a few years ago when K-State had those, the fullback was I believe it was Deneen at the time, who was getting a lot of playing time. And then they had two running backs. Well, that had been Harry Trotter and James Gilbert at the time. If memory serves, they ran some diamond formations. And it really wouldn't shock me to see some diamond formations with Joe Jackson, DJ Giddens, and Dylan Edwards, because you have Dylan and Joe, who are very similar running backs, and you have DJ, who he can lead block just like he showed on that jet sweep to Dylan, but he can also catch the ball out of the backfield or just kind of be the stud running back that he is. I think Joe Jackson, to answer that question from Snarecat's my answer, and I want to see more of him moving forward because that dude is electric with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, he looked nice. He looked comfortable. Gills, anyone? Bueller?
Yeah, I mean, the whole running back room, top to bottom, I think on Monday, Kleiman mentioned he even wanted to get Cantu in there against UT Martin. That just kind of shows they had so many guys that, they wanted to get in there. And so, that all that hype around that room certainly lived up to the expectations. And so, there's a number of guys, yeah, but you guys kind of hit it on the head. I'll just say I agree.
Are we going to talk about the receivers in this episode? I would assume there was a question.
Go for it. There's not really a question or dedicated to it, so go for it.
Well, okay. I mean, I guess my second answer would be Trey Spivey. I mean, he finished with 2 or 3 catches on the night, which was at least top 2 for receivers. I don't want to say a receiver outside of Jace Brown had more than 2 catches. I don't have the stats in front of me at the moment. But, I mean, another guy, Trey Spivey, who he played in the first half. It's not like he was getting reps with Jacob Knuth and Taquan Roberson. Like, he was rotating in at wide receiver, and I just think they're going to feature him more. I mean, I think that's just a preview for what he can do. And, I know people are a little disappointed with Keegan Johnson and Dante Cephas. I mean, I don't think Cephas had a catch. I think he was targeted once or twice. Same thing with Keegan Johnson. Those guys are going to get catches. They're going to play. But I think Trey Spivey has a chance to work in, maybe not as a starter, but be that first guy off the bench because he provides a weapon that nobody else on this team has, and that's size. I mean, they really don't have a red zone threat outside of the tight end position right now. And if you line up on the goal line and it's 1st and 2 and they're loading the box and you've got one-on-one coverage with Trey Spivey against a cornerback who's 5'9" or 5'10", I'll take the jump ball every single day of the week with him.
I'm with you. I think it's interesting. Dante Cephas looked out of sorts. I mean, it looked like there was a play where Avery tried to get him to, run to the corner, and Avery cut the ball loose, and Dante was still standing in the end zone, nowhere near the ball. So I don't know if that was a throwaway or if he ran the wrong pattern or just didn't complete his route. But then not long after, Trey Spivey started to step in. Guys, I think Trey Spivey is going to see more playing time. I think what he did on Saturday, what the comfort he shows with his quarterback, Avery, since they are also in the same class along with Jace Brown, I think Trey Spivey is going to be hard to keep off the field. I really do.
Yeah, we talk a lot about Avery Johnson's connection with Jace Brown, and rightfully so. Of course, they're in the same class and all that, but all those reps last year when they were the 2s or whatever on second team, do not forget about him as well. So, of course, Jace Brown, but I mean, there's a number of guys that Avery Johnson was also repeatedly throwing that ball to in practice.
Yep.
Next question is from Go State Kate. Is this the deepest team K-State has ever had?
I'm willing to say ever. Maybe go back to the 97, 98 teams in which they brought in all those junior college transfers, and there was a sudden infusion of experience and older bodies. I'm not sure going through that depth chart, but this team is certainly in the 21st century, if you want to put it that way, the deepest team. There's no way anyone was deeper. Depth has been a problem for this program for many years. And now, particularly on the defensive side, they seem to have answered that. They still don't have a totally proven backup quarterback, and you might have some line spots that lack a true backup, but they're trying to get the depth where 2 or 3 guys can back up all 5 spots. They've got a selection of receivers and running backs and certainly of tight ends. Yeah, this is a deep team. This is unfamiliar territory for Kansas State. And that means they should be able to withstand injuries as long as it's not at some of those spots, which gets to the point of why they're calling plays they are for Avery. For now, they're going to make sure they protect him. But Cole, this is a deep roster.
It is. And, it's so hard to build depth in college football in 2024. I mean, there is you don't have to look very far. You're watching this when it comes out on Wednesday. Well, if you watch college football while you were watching the Insiders, of course, on Monday night, Florida State's a prime example of that. That team lost a bunch of guys from a team that went undefeated in the regular season last year. And now they're just horrible. And they're bad. Like, they don't have any physicality. They don't have the skill guys that they had. They graduated a lot of guys. A lot of guys went to the NFL, and now they're just bad. And that is at the top ACC program outside of Clemson for the past 2 or 3 seasons, and a historic program. And K-State has built up depth in an era of NIL and an era of the transfer portal where if kids don't play, they leave. And they've somehow built up depth, and it's amazing, because it's so hard to do that. And the fact that they're able to do that at a school in the Big 12, at a school at Kansas State, which traditionally it's been really hard to build depth here. It says a lot about the culture that Chris Kleiman has. And I know that there's a coach to the West who might go by the name of Prime, not the
First name Amazon,
maybe.
Okay,
but he doesn't like the word
Alexa.
culture.
He doesn't.
Oh, don't say her name.
Got away with it.
The culture is real at K-State, and that's why guys are staying, and that's why there's depth. You go look at the program to the West. There is no culture because the coach doesn't like that word, and there's also no depth there. So
Nope.
You tell me. It sure seems like depth and culture go hand in hand.
Agreed.
Was that Big 12 Media Days when Prime started some reporter asked him about culture, and he was like, "What does culture mean to you?" And it was the weirdest thing, but whatever. Cole, I will give you a shout out here. I think it was You're Fighting Ever Fighting with Curry Sexton. This was from a few months back, but it's not time sensitive. I'd recommend anybody going back and giving that a listen. You guys talked about, I think I don't know if it was Curry Sexton or not. It was one of those episodes about the 2012 team, right? And how good things were going, how good that team was, just, especially with its starters. But when you have some injuries, Ty Zimmerman goes down, guys are getting banged up. That's why you lose a game against Baylor, right? And so this team, certainly in terms of being capable, being ready to fight through injuries and adversity, next man up. I mean, every team praises that mentality, sure, but truly K-State, this might be the best team ready to deal with some of those challenges throughout the ebbs and flows of a season.
Agreed. I'm confident that this team is in good shape to weather the storm this season, but we all know quarterback, this guy's kind of one of a kind, and that's why they're being cautious with him.
But would you guys agree that K-State's deepest where they need to be? I mean, take the quarterback out, because again, I go back to this. Nobody is deep at quarterback. Like K-State fans have to get that out of their mind of what last year was. Last year was an anomaly. Like, that just doesn't happen where you have two guys who could legitimately go 8-4, 9-3 and lead a team to that season. You don't have that in college football today. You just don't. And so K-State's deep where they need to be. That's along the offensive line. That's along the defensive line. And honestly, that's probably in the secondary. I mean, that's really where you need to be. If you can be deep in the trenches and then you can be deep on the perimeter defensively, you're fine. And so that's K-State. If you were to ask me where are the deepest spots, I would probably go D-line 1, secondary 2, offensive line 3.
I think it's pretty much everywhere besides maybe, wide receivers, we didn't see a whole lot, but there's so much depth there. There's so much upside, especially in like the quote unquote bottom of that room. But the only real room that doesn't necessarily have the best depth off of what we saw on Saturday was quarterback, right? Yeah. But you got to keep in mind, we've talked about this so much, those backup quarterbacks were not given the keys to go out and play either. I think it was run, pass, like to open up for both of those guys, correct? So, yeah, we can talk about Avery Johnson. Okay, need to let him go out and play, let him get hit, get him energized, get him in the groove of a game. But I think it might be too early to rule out Knuth or Roberson as, good backups. We've heard a lot about it, right? There's still, Kleiman said on Monday, it's still an ongoing battle. The fact that they haven't named a starter, it's got to be a good thing.
Yep.
Or excuse me, name the number 2. I'm sorry. Name. They have not named the number 2 yet. Sorry.
Quarterback controversy in Manhattan, according to Ryan Gilbert.
Yeah, is it a controversy if it's a backup? I don't think so.
It's just a battle.
Yeah, it's just a little tussle.
Yep.
From Call Me T22. Is it just me, or have we not heard enough about Toby Osunsami this offseason? It didn't feel like he got enough love for what he showed on Saturday.
Truth to that in many levels, but we didn't hear about him either. I knew that we'd seen glimpses of what he could be last season, but with the new 4-man front, we weren't really sure how they were going to use him. Would he be in there in 3-man fronts? And we did see them use him a little bit with his hands on the ground, because that's not something he's done. And he told me after the game, he's more comfortable that way. He just gets to, go play football, just read what's in front of him and not have to overthink like a linebacker does. And he just wants to go get people, but he wants to be an every down guy, not just the pass rush specialist. So he's working on that. So there's still holes in his game. Keep in mind that UT Martin had some tackle issues. Their strength was on the interior of the line. So he took advantage of that, but I think he's going to be a problem for even really good tackles this year. Now my question is does he take that next step and really assert himself as an every down kind of guy? Because once he and other guys do that, maybe Ryan Davis, I don't know. They're going to have defensive ends for years to come that can really get after the quarterback.
I look at this 2 ways, and I've been thinking about this too, guys, because you can look at it from 2 different perspectives. We didn't really hear much about Damian Alalio in the offseason up until about a week before, and then they were like, yeah, Damian. I think Tui kind of spilled the beans. He's going to be the starter. And we're all like, what? We knew he was going to play, but he's going to start? They brought in Malcolm Alcorn Crowder to kind of be that guy to play in and nose. Uso came back for his 6th year. Damian's a nice player, but he'll probably rotate it. No, he's going to start. And it was obvious. He was good. He was ready to start. And so we didn't hear much about him. And I think that was on purpose. And so I go along those same lines with Toby Osunsami. I don't think we heard much about Toby because the coaches knew that he was going to come out and he was going to be an absolute baller. And why tip your hand to the rest of the league that we have this guy who runs a 4.5, who's a defensive end, who's 6'3", who's still putting on weight, who's still getting faster, bigger, faster, stronger. But, oh, yeah, he's able to just beat every single tackle around the edge and get to the quarterback. Like, he was kind of a hidden mystery. And so I think it could be that, or it's the exact opposite end of the spectrum. They really had no idea what they were going to get. They threw him out there, and he performed well. Honestly, I probably tend to lean more the latter. They were kind of trying to play their cards a little close to the chest. But, man, I mean, it was impressive to watch because that kid has some skills.
Agreed.
From Itam Bibi, last question of the first half. What has made K-State's defensive ends so good in recent years? Local high school football style, Buddy Wyatt coaching, our offensive scheme. Any of the above?
Well, you go back and look at Ryan Mueller. Nobody was recruiting him. He was a walk-on, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Same with Felix. Felix and Udike Ozama was there was no way anyone was offering him. K-State was crazy to do it. And he grew into something special. Jordan Willis was a pretty big deal out of high school. That was a nice get. They seem to be doing a remarkable job of focusing in on guys who will turn in from really good high school defensive ends into Division I, Power 4 defensive ends within a couple years with development in the weight room. That's how they get them. They take them undersized and they build them to the right size. A lot of big programs aren't patient enough for that. A lot of big programs want them, off the shelf, ready to go. K-State's willing to develop them. And I think they've just done a really good job of isolating the skill traits that you need to succeed once you get your size. And guys are put in the work. And now it's a competitive room. So you got to work hard to get on the field. And once you get a room that competitive, it's going to be very difficult to get on the field. So you just keep working harder and harder. Now, will that mean guys will leave at the end of the year? It could. in the portal era, who knows? But right now, it's an embarrassment of riches at defensive end for this K-State football team.
This is a good question, but specifically talking about Toby, this is the guy who played running back in high school. He played linebacker in high school. He did not play defensive end, and I don't think that was the plan, was for Toby to play defensive end when he got on campus. But they realized this guy's kind of a freak athlete, so maybe we can have him down there go get after the passer. But, I think there is something to the local style of high school football because, you have to be able as a defensive end to stop the run. Like you have to be able to. You can get coached on how to rush the passer, but you can't get coached on how to stop the run because that is all toughness. It is all toughness. You're going to get double teamed. The ball's going to be coming right at you. You're going to get double teamed. You got to learn, take on that block, to eat that block, and make sure that those offensive linemen don't get to the linebackers so the guys who are standing behind you can make the tackle. I mean, when you're running a 3-man front, that's what you're supposed to do. And so I think that the toughness aspect of what, maybe not just local kids, but really just the Midwest in general, because you look along that defensive line and Brendan Mott, Iowa, now Ryan Davis and Uso, probably the two outliers, but pretty much everybody else is from the Midwest. And so I think that it's just that blue collar attitude of my hand's going to be in the ground. I'm going to eat that double team. You're not going to get by me. And if I can get to the passer, I'll add some tools to my toolbox to get to the passer. But no, you're not getting by me. And those guys behind me are going to make the tackle. So yeah, I think there is some truth to that.
Yep. I agree. I'm impressed with them. It's going to be fun. There's nothing more fun for me than a quarterback that can just make plays with his legs when he needs to, and a defensive end that can get to the quarterback in big moments of the game. And it looks like K-State's got at least one, if not multiple defensive ends that can do that. Gills, any final thoughts in this segment?
I was just going to say you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? And so we talk so much about the depth, right? That's why K-State's defensive ends can be so disruptive. Get to the quarterback, right? They're rotating in. Now, if they're playing 80, 90% of the snaps, you're not going to be a full go on every play. You're just not. But when everybody's rotating in and the drop off from the best defensive end on the team, whoever that may be, to the 5th, 6th is not that great. That's why the defensive end room can be so good. So everything you guys mentioned, absolutely 100% is correct. Developing players, getting them stronger, playing with that edge, but you can't play with that edge, Cole, if you're on the field every snap, right? So rotating guys in, that just speaks to the depth that we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's it for the first half of the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Got more of your questions from Wabash Station as the Kansas State Wildcats prepare to take on the Tulane Green Wave on Saturday down in New Orleans. It's 11 a.m. kick. Guys, what TV outlet's it on?
ESPN.
It's on the big one?
Bob Wischusen and Louis Riddick on the call.
Man.
Be leading right into game
almost
day.
like they didn't mention that last night at all.
Nope.
I don't know. I'm not sure what ESPN is thinking sometimes. Yeah, you should probably promote the games you're going to be broadcasting, not just the SEC. That's just me. I'm an outlier, apparently. And now we're going to take a break and hear from our friends at the Fridge and whatever else YouTube wants to stick in there, or Megaphone. I mean, you might be listening on the audio only podcast and you're going to hear a completely different ad. We'll see. Just let me know.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Fitz and Gills and Coles right here in your Powercat Podcast headquarters. I'm in the Cats and Dogs studio. These two guys are in their secret bunkers. Well, look, that's Cole. He's got a bunker. And Gills has got a luxurious Aggieville apartment overlooking probably some dumpsters. I don't know what.
That is very accurate. Out of my bedroom window, there's two of them, actually, 2 dumpsters.
So please let us know if one of them catches on fire. We're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Their dumpsters are never on fire. They're just full of boxes that they had to cut up because they have been selling so much liquor that they can't keep it stocked. They keep putting it out because you guys are fantastic. Please support the Fridge. They have supported us for a very long time. The Fridge Wholesale Liquor at the corner of this and that in the town in which we live. You're not going to need it for Saturday because you're not coming to Manhattan. But when you come to Manhattan next week, like that Friday night game, yep, you're going to need it. Make sure you stop in there and get it. What?
Who says you can't go to Manhattan just because K-State doesn't have a home game?
There we go.
Who says you can't do that?
That's very true. If you want to come to Manhattan and watch at your favorite bar, or maybe, how about this? You've got the tailgate set up. You can watch in the parking lot. So make that a Fridge Wholesale Liquor tailgate. Just set up your tailgate right there in the parking lot. They'll love you for that. And have a good time. Have your whole day there. And you can just run in. Look, you don't have to buy too much alcohol that way. You just run in and make your own 6-pack, come back out. You finish that one. You run back in and get another one. There we go. Tailgate at the Fridge on Saturday. That's weird. Here we go. More of your questions from Wabash Station. Gills, take it away.
From Colorado Cat, discuss tight end play. We had a touchdown pass, but Garrett Oakley was pretty quiet. Is it a depth thing?
Yeah, they got a lot deep. They're deep. And it's not just these three. The younger guys, Will Ancio's on the depth chart too. They like him a lot. We found out that, Lofton has really come on in the fall and made a major breakthrough. So now they've got legitimately 3 guys they can rotate in and out and probably start to use for specific needs. But I think Oakley will be a big part of this offense. He just wasn't in the flow that first game. The plays weren't called when he was in. It's often the player rotations on occasion, particularly in a game like that, don't really mean much in terms of personnel. They're going to run it with the personnel. Now they'll zero in on that as the season goes. But against Tennessee Martin, I don't know if you're going to tip your hat on any tendencies of what personnel you want to use in different plays. So I just think it was play calling didn't line up with when he was on the field.
Are you all in on Braden Lofton, Fitz? I'm curious where you stand on Braden Lofton and Garrett Oakley, because what I saw from Garrett Oakley as a whole last year versus what I saw from Braden Lofton in one game, I understand why everybody is all aboard the Braden Lofton hype train. I get it. But I still think Oakley has a chance to be a really good player. And I think fans need to kind of look at it instead of, who's going to be better, Oakley or Lofton. Look at the production that you can get from both of those guys and combine it together. And if you can get close to what Senate produced, then I think that, you're going to be in good shape, because production will go down from the tight ends because they're going to try and get the ball to everybody. But I do think realistically, you're looking at more of like a 60-40 split with Oakley and Lofton. So both of those guys' numbers won't be as high as people want them to be, but you have to look at combined production. But
I'm with you on Garrett Oakley. He's one of my favorite guys on the offensive side of the ball. He just makes himself available. He's a big target. He fills a lot of needs over there. I was surprised he didn't have any receptions, but I don't think it was indicative of anything that was planned or intended. I think it's just how the game fell, and I think he will be a prominent part of this offense.
You also got to look at it too, guys. Go ahead, Gilbert.
No, you're good. You're good, bro.
So you look at what those guys did and who came out onto the field first. It was Oakley. So, I think that he's still pretty clearly the number 1 tight end. Saturday will tell us a lot. And guys, I understand they love Will Swanson, and he really is a good blocking tight end. But if you really want to get creative, you can have Lofton and Oakley out on the field at the same time. And I really don't think you lose much on the blocking front, but you completely gain a receiver. So if you're going to go to a 2 tight end set, I think we could see that a little bit more, especially later in the season.
Like I've said, with this talent, you can line up in a 2 tight end set, 22 personnel, have both Dylan and DJ in the game. And next thing you know, you've got 2 tight ends and a running back split out, and you've got the wrong personnel on the field. So I think it's very intriguing what they can do with these weapons. And, I didn't expect them to show any of this creative stuff. I thought they'd dig into the playbook a little bit more with more common play, but they've got a lot of things they can do with this personnel. It's going to be a really flexible offense and creative if they want to.
K-State had played Tulane its first week, or Arizona was the first game. I don't think we're having this discussion really. Fitz, you mentioned it wasn't intended or planned to have, Oakley not necessarily be a part of the plan. I think if there was one thing to be planned or intended, it was just, hey, kind of like we're talking about with Avery Johnson or the wideouts, Don't show off the playbook. Keep it simple. Don't give too much away. So I think we're going to have a much different look on Garrett Oakley after the Tulane game. He kind of fits that Ben Sinnott mold, right? And we've seen what tight ends can do, within this offense. And so that's all respect to Braden Lofton and the depth at tight end. It's there for sure, but I would make no mistake about it. Garrett Oakley's still the top dog there in that room.
I would agree.
Next question from Ohio Powercat. What would you like to see against Tulane that would make you feel confident about the rest of the season? What would cause you concern? And I will say real quick, we have a question about Avery running next. So, because Fitz, I have a feeling that's where you were going to go with this, right? So hold your horses on that thought.
You know me well. Yeah, I would just like to see greater variation in this offense and an intent to go for the jugular early in the game. Whether it's defense, special teams, or offense, to really get after the opponent and try to make Tulane uncomfortable, because last time these teams met, Tulane was never uncomfortable. They were in that game in case they'd let them stay in that game. They never attacked them the way they could have or should have. They were incredibly conservative. They just, I don't know. It was a weird game. And I think they're going to be more aggressive with this one. They're not going to mess around. And it's time probably already to show a few things heading into that Arizona game, because it's not just necessarily about looking good for the voters and, good for the committee, which I think is important. It's also about telling your team, we can kick some ass if we want to. We can just kick it in gear and dismantle someone. I want to see them get after Tulane early and often. And whether that's a certain guy running the ball or throwing the ball or other players being the star, I'd like to see a little creativity and just knock out Tulane early in this game.
I want to see him wear the all-white uniforms. That's valid.
That'll help with that'll help Tulane.
You know what? Beat the curse. You lost to Tulane when you wore an alternate helmet the last time, but you can beat the curse. It's gonna be 87 degrees with 110% humidity. Wear the dang all-white uniforms. We talked to Avery Johnson at Big 12 Media Days, guys. He is going to be lobbying for those all-whites, especially. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they wear those. They wear those uniforms on Saturday. I really don't think it's out of the realm.
On that heat and humidity, that might be exactly what they want to do. And why don't you put the sailor Willie on the side of the helmet since you're playing the green wave?
There you go. You know what an easy way to do it would be? Don't release anything. Just have your players run out there. So when you guys are at the stadium at 9:30 and you see the kickers and punters go out there and they're wearing white pants, inevitably, Gilbert or Fitz, you guys will tweet, Kansas State is warming up in white pants. And for Fitz, you'll have a sarcastic joke attached to it. For Gilbert, he'll say how much he absolutely loves alternate uniforms. So, yeah, I seriously think they should wear the all-white uniforms and just run out there and not tell anybody. But as far as the game goes, win the game. I know I said on the Insiders that they probably need to win it convincingly, but Big B talked me out of that. Win the game. If you win the game, doesn't matter how you do it. You walk out of there 2-0. This seems like a game where it's just kind of survive and advance. Obviously, you want to look good, survive and advance, and get back home against Arizona on a Friday night. Survive and advance.
We were asked something pretty dang similar about what we wanted to see against UT Martin, and my answer is pretty much going to be the same heading into this week. Explosive plays from the playmakers, not Avery Johnson. I mean, I guess that, maybe him running, scrambling, but let Dylan Edwards get out in space. Let any of those wideouts make a move in the open field and gain yardage that way. It's awesome to see a deep bomb like we saw. That was Jace Brown, right? Who got down at the 1, right? That's great. That's awesome. But you got to have some, Chris Kleiman talked about it, his guys creating their own explosive plays. And so that's kind of the answer that I would go with. And I think Dylan and DJ check those boxes against UT Martin. But as far as the wideouts go, as far as, Garrett Oakley, for example, I'm still skeptical there. So, it'd be awesome. It'd be awesome if this team could have Avery Johnson not have to be the superhero. If the defense plays the way that it did last week, okay, if the playmakers can live up to that potential, be the difference makers in the games. I'm not saying Avery Johnson has to go out and be just a game manager, but take the pressure off of him. And I think he's just going to be that much more comfortable, because guys, that's the thing. That is going to be a thing. Maybe not the main storyline this year, but Avery Johnson's going to have to settle in and get comfortable. Early on in that UT Martin game, for whatever reason, I don't think he was fully comfortable until he got that pop and he was like, all right, it's game time. But that didn't happen. Was that third quarter, second quarter?
Third quarter. I'm telling you, that's what.
Yeah.
Read the next question. Let's get to that.
Yeah. TDE 67 wants to know, will we see Avery Johnson run, designed or otherwise, on the first drive against Tulane this week?
I think it's important. I think it's really important. And now, look, a lot of this is, the zone read, read option type thing where he's looking at the defense, figuring out who gets the ball. Coach Kleiman said that first play of the game against UT Martin, there was 3 options there: to hand it to DJ Giddens, which he did, keep the ball, or toss it over to Dylan Edwards, which is interesting. So maybe they'll go back to that, and Tulane will think that it's DJ again. But you're right. I mean, he said, as soon as I got popped, I'm in the game. You gotta let him get his juices flowing, and once he does, he's going to be okay. I think they'll run him a little bit more in this game, only because the defense, is going to be a little more salty, and I think he's a guy that can run away from a really good defense, and we'll see if they use him, how much they use him. Look, if Tulane decides, well, he didn't run the ball much in that opener, we don't need to worry about him. He could just keep the ball all day and run through that defense. We'll see. Again, I understand they don't want to put him in peril, but you also have to let him play. You can't make him be someone else in order to protect him, because then you might as well play Jacob Knuth. I mean, honestly, he's not a pocket passer. He can pass from the pocket, but he better be in the rhythm of the game, which he wasn't until, really the third quarter.
I think we're going to see another option type play on the first drive, maybe even the first play of the game. I can tell you what I would run right now. I would run a little triple option jet sweep with Dylan Edwards coming across the field with an option to hand him the jet sweep. If not, it just turns into Speedo with DJ Giddens in the backfield, speed option. And I think that would really help, because it would kind of help get Avery into the rhythm of, hey, if you want to give this, you can give this. But now you're focused on reading one guy. And you can either make that guy miss and be wrong and still get a big play, or if you want to pitch the ball and you don't get the look that you like, you can pitch it over to your running back, who then has the ability to get downfield. I mean, that's what makes Dylan Edwards and DJ Giddens so dangerous in the backfield, is because you could run a triple option type play on almost every single play and get positive yards. I mean, guys, I know that this is college football, this is the Big 12, but if those guys were playing for Army, if those guys were playing for Navy and they were in the triple option offense, could you imagine having a running quarterback and then 2 running backs like that? You can use those same concepts and have them in this kind of offense. You can have the triple option concepts in the spread offense and make it work. I want to see that on the first drive, and I think that's probably what we're going to see with Avery.
Biggest thing for this offensive staff is to get Avery Johnson comfortable, right? Running the football certainly is, in my opinion, you guys would probably agree, one of the best ways to do that. Nobody out there is denying Avery Johnson's physical talents, right? He's a heck of an athlete. And so really the biggest challenge that's in front of Avery Johnson this year is everything above the neck, right? Deciphering the defense, quick decision-making, that sorts of stuff. Do I hand this ball off or do I keep it? All that sorts of stuff is going to not make or break Avery Johnson's year, but it's going to make a big difference. And so any way that you can get Avery Johnson comfortable to where he's not thinking, he's just going out and playing, he's going to be so much better. Look at a guy like Justin Fields in the NFL. He is a heck of an athlete, but he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL because some guys just aren't as good as processing stuff as others. Tom Brady's, I'm sure all NFL athletes are great athletes, but Tom Brady's not a superstar athlete. All of his success was how well he was able to pick apart a defense, right? And so getting Avery Johnson comfortable, an athlete like that, nobody is going to deny what he can do with his abilities. It's about getting him comfortable. And so what's the best way to get him into his groove? Go out and play just play like you're, close your eyes. You're with Dylan Edwards on the third grade playground, whatever. That's the way that Avery Johnson can go out and live to his full potential, is just going out and playing. The best way to get him comfortable with that is running him.
Correct.
Hey, Gilbert, who does Justin Fields play for?
Plays for the Steelers. Plays for the
Ah.
Steelers. I don't know if they play. I don't know. I don't know anything about the Steelers, to be quite honest with
Do
you.
you know what Justin Fields' mom does?
No.
She makes cookies.
Oh, that's a good one. I've never heard that.
Yeah,
That's really good. Mrs. Fields cookies.
Mhm.
Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Haha.
Yeah. Hey, that guy who keeps creating new accounts, tell me I'm not funny. Come on, man.
That's
crazy.
actually my account, Fitz. I think I
I
should
don't.
break the news to you.
That's exactly right. He's going to have account number 3 to tell me I'm not funny. I don't
Not
care.
my account, but I agree with it.
I don't care. I don't care.
Any other Avery thoughts before we wrap up and talk about the Big 12 conference?
Oh, we're going to do that.
We
No,
got
I
the final
look.
question. Go ahead.
I've said this over and over, and I truly believe this. K-State doesn't need to just win. They need to get on, not just with your functionary highlights. K-State won 41-6. Look at what this guy did. Look at what that guy did. They need to have incredible plays, and the most likely place for that is from Avery Johnson. They need to have people talking about them, not just winning. Actually, create, foster, and harvest that kind of joy of football, that upside that K-State football has with this team, and make sure people know around the country know, hey, K-State's a fun team to watch.
Question for you guys before we move on here. Would you take a 37-20 win?
Of course, I'll take the win.
Sure.
I don't think it accomplishes everything you need to accomplish, but yeah.
37-20? 37-20?
Yeah.
Ole Miss was favored by 7 points last year going into Tulane, and that was the score of their game. They won 37-20 in week 3. They were 7-point favorites. K-State's 10-point favorites right now. Ole Miss was 1-0. Tulane was 1-0. I look at that game. Ole Miss was number 9 in the country. I look at that game and I say that's exactly what Kansas State can do. And if they can win by 17 points on the road against a pretty good Tulane team, that's a success.
I'm going to be honest. If this K-State defense gives up 20 points, I'm going to be a little disappointed against Tulane. Look, they've got athletes. I know that, but they don't have the size to kind of overwhelm you like some Big 12 teams and certainly SEC teams have. I'll be disappointed. You know, they could be special teams or defensive points for the Green Wave. So I don't know, but I don't see them scoring 20 points. And if you get up into the 30s, you're going to have a pretty comfortable day at the office.
Keep in mind, though, guys, first-year head coach. Well, not first-year head coach, but first year at Tulane, first-year starting quarterback, and so that's where K-State can have a big edge, especially in week 2 where there's a shorter time. Obviously, Tulane played a couple days before K-State did, but a shorter time to prepare. When you have a Power 4. Are we at 4 now, Fitz?
Yeah,
right?
at 4.
Power 4 coaching staff. That's where you got to gain your edge against, with all due respect, against a lesser put together coaching staff, bluntly put. So that's where K-State can really.
Agreed.
Okay, last question from KSU number 1. So it's a K-Stater asking a Big 12 question. This is confusing. Should we have some concerns about other Big 12 programs not representing the conference well? Texas Tech should have probably lost, and Houston does not look good. Arizona had a rough start as well.
Well, I mean, let's not overreact to 1 week. Look, Houston's a work in progress, and the progress hasn't even started. Yeah. Apparently not. And Big B and I discussed it today or yesterday, I guess it was, on the Big 12 Insiders, that maybe this team hasn't been practicing well. And Willie Fritz knew this team wasn't where it needed to be. And he went out there and watched his team get beat 27-7, and maybe now he'll have their attention. Or maybe UNLV is as good as people expect and is going to be the non-Power 4 addition to the 12-team playoff. There's some people that think it will be the Rebels, which would be a cool story. But Houston is going to need a rebuild. Every team comes into the conference for a different reason, and Houston's was truly unique. They were here as a defensive measure. That prevented the ACC or someone else from coming in and getting a really valuable market. And look, I understand that Houston doesn't really do much in the Houston market. Even basketball doesn't move the needle. They've got the Rockets, for heaven's sakes. But there's that possibility, and there's that recruiting base. And Willie Fritz is the right guy. So I'm going to be more than happy to give them a couple of years on that. Cincinnati's got to get going. They looked pretty good, but it's got to be consistent. Arizona State looked pretty good. Arizona's defense looked like trash. The offense is awesome. So those are points of concern. I'm worried about West Virginia. What the hell was that? So look, you're always going to have some teams cycling up and cycling down. And that's just the nature of any conference. Someone has to win and lose. But the conference did go 14-2, and one of those losses was to a top 10 program at Penn State. So I'm not sweating it too much, but I think this conference is going to have a few teams you can check off as maybe wins. But those games later in the season for K-State, when they have Cincinnati and Arizona State coming to town, maybe those will be a little bit stiffer competition than we thought.
I'm going to make an analogy for all of the educators listening.
Boy.
You know how Gilbert and Fitz, you guys can relate to this because you all, believe it or not, one day were students. You were a student in a class, and Gilbert, you were probably this kid that no matter what you did, that kid still would not do the work. That kid would still not do the work. And maybe you were that guy. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you were, Gilbert.
I'm that guy.
But when you had a smaller class, right? When you had a smaller class, there were less of those kids. When you only had 10 kids in a class, there was a good chance that all 10 of them would do what they needed to do. But now that there's 16 kids in that class, it makes it real hard for all of those kids to do what they needed to do. That's kind of what's going on with the Big 12, right? The more teams you add, the more likely there are some teams that flat out are just going to suck, like bluntly put, right? So that's just kind of the way that it is, and you going to have to roll with it. I'm not worried about the conference because I still think the top is really good. I think the middle is pretty good. I'm excited to watch Baylor and Utah in a non-conference game this weekend. But yeah, I'm not worried about the Big 12 to answer that question.
Agreed.
Fitz, you don't necessarily cover the Big 12, but you are much more plugged in with your Big 12 Insider show and stuff than I am. But, so it's more or less kind of looking at scores, box scores, stuff like that. Keep in mind that, and you might say that I'm wrong, but you look at K-State, if you're a casual fan, if you're super casual, you think, okay, K-State played well. They blew out UT Martin. But if you kind of read between the lines a little bit, it wasn't pretty in the first half, right? They had some mistakes. But then if you really, 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 really look into it, that, the game plan was just to go out and not give anything away, right? So, I don't know enough about these Tech games that, that for Houston, obviously what Houston was bad, but for Tech, Arizona early on with their defensive struggles, we don't know the real game plan there. We don't know their opponents, how well or poor. Obviously, we got an idea. We got a good gauge on them. Fitz, you're more plugged in than I'll really ever be on the Big 12. But, I think everything in week one, and K-State certainly included, take it with a grain of salt. And, it's not exactly the NFL preseason because these games matter much, much more. They actually matter, but just take everything with a grain of salt, and everything you see in week one, if you see those patterns to occur again for consecutive weeks in week two, and they start to play some better teams, okay, then yeah, you can say this team's bad or what have you. But for now, with some of these teams struggling, guys, K-State struggled, but we're not hitting the panic button because we know that was the emphasis was to not go out and beat UT Martin by 1 million, right?
Yep. Judging from the comments, today on Tuesday was the power rankings day for Big B on the Insiders. And judging from the comments of the Tech fans, Joey McGuire lost a lot of traction with his fans in that game. Even though they won, going to overtime against Abilene Christian, giving up that volume of points to a team in a season opener, it's troubling. And I don't think the fans are real excited about what they're seeing right now. And they've gone from all in to pretty tepid, right? Suddenly with Joey McGuire, he better start winning some games and get that program rolling, because that was ugly, guys. They should have lost. They just flat out should have lost that game. They got off the hook, so they're going to have the win. But man, that was bad. I think Houston and Tech had the two worst performances, and Tech won. And then you got to throw West Virginia in there because they look like they hadn't had practice yet. It's like they might want to try practice to learn how to snap a ball, not fumble, complete passes.
Not a game.
Football stuff.
Not a game. We're not talking about a game.
We're talking about practice.
We're talking about practice, man.
That is back-to-back weeks.
And we're talking about practice.
Did you listen to last week's, Cole?
I did.
I dropped that same reference last week.
Yep.
We were talking about Big B was mentioning practice, man. Fitz, do you get that?
Yep, I get it. Do you get when I say
that old.
Do you get what I say when I say faux ficus? Oh, faux ficus. Okay, you don't. See, I'm cooler than you. That's it for the podcast this week. I'm much cooler than Ryan Gilbert. I'm going to give Cole Carmody a break because he's still cool. He's got kid cred, like the high school kid thinks Cole, Mr. Carmody, as he's referred to, Mr. C, is a badass.
I love it when we'll be up for a basketball game or whatever. We'll be around and like this 16-year-old like comes out of nowhere and is like, Mr. Carmody, Mr. Carmody. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Usually if a 16-year-old boy's stopping by, it's trouble. But in this case, it's one of his students.
In this podcast now.
Yeah, that's the podcast. We'll talk to you next week on this one, but we got the pregame podcast 24 hours from now, and then I'll turn it over to Cole and Monty Spiller for the Friday walkthrough, and that will drop while Ryan Gilbert and I are headed to New Orleans.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.